It's the Blues Rock Show with Pete Francis and Willie Witten.
Welcome to the Blues Rock Show. I'm Pete Francis, joined by Willie Witten. Today, our special guest is slide guitar extraordinaire Troy Redfern. He's got a new album coming out August 6th, The Fire Cosmic. Troy, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you guys for having me. Really appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about your background, kind of when you decided, hey, I want to give music a shot and have that be my career.
My interest in music started really early when I was kind of like around 6, and so all throughout my teenage years, I was in bands at school and then sort of carried on with that, when I left school. And so I've always been sort of like performing and doing that, but to make a career of it under my own name, that kind of started about 5 years ago. That's when I decided to, because I've been playing in different bands and whatnot, but the conscious decision to say, right, okay, I'm going to do this just under my own name. Yeah, that was around 5 years back.
So growing up, who were you listening to? What got you going? Because your style of music, it tends to have a lot of that Appalachian sort of country blues roots. And I don't think you're from Appalachia, or at least you don't have the accent for it.
No, I'm a big fan of Levon Helm, and his later albums. Dirt Farmer is such a great album. That really affected me, that album. But going back to, way back, I was lucky enough, this is pre-internet days when I was a kid, to be lent a Sun House record. And before that, I was listening to Jimi Hendrix and other things, but there was no sort of Spotify. It was literally a case of if a friend lent you something, you heard it, or if you were lucky enough to stumble across it in the record shop. And that really changed kind of my headspace and approach. I'd listen to other things like Queen and all the classic rock stuff. Deep Purple was a big thing. So yeah, Sun House was kind of the gateway really into that kind of music. And then over the years, I discovered different people, Fred McDowell. And I think what I'm really drawn to is, the hill country blues music, R.L. Burnside and all that crowd of people that was always seemed kind of really real and raw. And, and they were playing for their local communities originally, weren't they? They were kind of like, doing that, So yeah, that's what informed my sort of style, as well as other things like Johnny Winter,
So it sounds to me like you gravitated towards music through friends and the people you hung out with when you say trading CDs. Was there also someone in your family that was sort of a guidepost or that drew you into it, or are you sort of on your own in this endeavor?
I've got 3 older brothers, and the oldest one had a really good vinyl collection. And he had all sorts of stuff. I remember listening to the 50s Elvis, Scotty Moore sort of playing, when I was a young kid, King Creole, I remember standing out as being such an amazing track. And he got me into Queen when I was 6. I wanted to go and see the movie Flash Gordon, and my parents wouldn't take me. So he bought me the single, the 7-inch. And that was kind of the first single I bought, of my own, and from that moment forward, that kind of like led me down the path of sort of like wanting to get into music and stuff. So I think that's at the root of it.
So Troy, obviously you play a lot of slide, and I think for a lot of guitar players, slide is very intimidating. So what made you decide, hey, I want to pick this up?
When I was about 17, a girlfriend's father showed me how to tune a guitar to open tuning, and to sort of different types of open tuning, like modal tunings and all sorts. And that really opened that door. I was lucky enough to sort of bump into, to sort of meet that guy. And so then I sort of just messed around with it over the years. And I've discovered certain things that really help. If someone is wanting to get into slide, I would suggest getting, a spare guitar just to leave in that tuning, and to get some thick strings, because it's all about string tension. You want something that when you rest the slide on the strings, it isn't going to isn't going to push the strings now. So you need a good sort of like some good string tension. But I would say, yeah, it was that guy that really, kind of pushed me, down that road really.
Do you still experiment? Because from what I hear in so much of your playing, the slide tends to be your default way of conjuring up this cinematic music that you make. Do you still have times where you'll spend an afternoon playing in like a standard E tuning, or have you pretty much always dropping into slide and open tunings first in this day?
Yeah, you're right. Most of the guitars I've got scattered around where I'm sitting now, they're in open tuning. There's one that I use, that's in standard, but I feel more comfortable now. I feel at home with open tunings, especially the one that the Resonator's in, that I use. I've just become really familiar with it, and for writing, I just think it's a great tool for writing. When I go back to I can still, obviously standard's still something that I learned to play over when I was growing up. But I feel more at home, on a Resonator in an open tuning than anywhere else, I think.
Are there any slide players that have really inspired you?
Yeah, Fred McDowell, sort of like R.L. Burnside, Johnny Winter. There's a Canadian guy that's not that well known called Keith Hallett. I don't know if you've heard of Keith, but
I'm not familiar with him. No,
he's great. He's brilliant, and he's not that well known, but he's just a monster sort of guitar player, I think. Even some of Sean Costello's sort of like occasionally he would play slide. I love his playing. There's so many. Denny Wally, who played with Frank Zappa, he's always been a sort of like huge influence. And of course, there's people like Ryan Kuder and Blind Willie Johnson and those guys as well. There's so many. I think you sort of absorb everything, don't you? When you listen to that becomes part of your imagination. When you then play, aspects of that may come through your playing.
I want to ask a little bit about a guitar that you play a lot these days. It's a National Resonator, and I think for a lot of people this needs to sink in. I believe it's from the year, and there it is, 1929.
Yeah.
So a little quick math, that makes that guitar, I believe, 92 years old.
A lot older than all of us, that's for sure.
How the heck did you come into possession of this, Troy? How did you acquire this?
Well, it's kind of a sort of bit of a funny story, really. I've got a couple of other Resonators, but I've always been drawn to. I've seen some of these that have this kind of like where the paints come off, so you can see the white undercoat, and I always love that kind of look. But you just don't see them come up. I've got watches on eBay and Reverb and all these kind of sites. So I'm always searching. Probably been looking for about 10 years for something like this. And I was on Reverb, and one day this one came up in Germany, and I was like, my God, that's the guitar. That's what I've been searching for. So I kind of looked around the room thinking, what can I sell to get this guitar? Because this, what can that one go? Can this one go? And I put a watch on it, and the next day I went straight back on, and it gone. And I'm like, no, because the one thing, if you see something that's rare and you don't jump on it, you're not going to get another one come up for another 10 years, maybe, So a couple of months went by. I just forgot about it. I was really angry and cross that I, just sorted it out immediately. And it was my birthday, and my partner Emma made me close my eyes and sort of like brought this package and put it on the side. And I opened my eyes and I could tell it was a guitar wrapped up. And I'm like, geez, that's. But what I first thought was, buying a guitar for someone can be a bit of a dodgy thing, because they're very specific things, aren't they? Instruments. I thought, oh no, I wonder what this is. How am I going to respond to this? Opened it up, and there's the Resonator in there, and I was just like, I was completely speechless. I didn't know what the.
So this specific one. So she scooped you.
She scooped it, yeah, because I told her that I'd seen this guitar, and I've got to sell stuff, tomorrow, and I've got to sort it out. And yeah, she did it. It was lucky that it was good, because she'd been sitting on it for 2 months. So if there was something wrong with it, she couldn't have probably sent it back to the guys in Germany, but luckily it was all good. So I was blown away. And, it's one that, and it's my number one guitar, and it's the sentimental value and just the way it sounds, it's the one I'll keep with me to the day I die, I think,
Lucky man. So let's talk about the new album coming out on August 6th, The Fire Cosmic. One thing that I thought was pretty interesting was you're actually doing a lot of the art that's involved with this album. Can you kind of talk about that and kind of your background there?
Yeah. I've always been a huge comic book fan. When I was a kid, that was the kind of job I'd like to, have done. I was into art and at school and whatnot. And and I've collected sort of comics, and I've always messed around, sort of drawing and doing things, but never anything too serious. So anyway, when it came to getting the artwork for the new album, I initially commissioned someone from Brazil to do it, and around the same time I'd started sort of doing more of that artwork, and I finished this one. I've actually got it right here because the vinyl just arrived today. So I kind of I started working on this just as a bit of fun, really, because I wanted to use like a cosmic 60s background and put myself in there with a resonator. And I kind of I thought, I like it, but I tested it on social media. I just put it up there and thinking, is this a good idea even to put it up there? And the response was great, to it. And it surprised me. It really, surprised me. So then I thought I'd do some more. So I did one for Bumblefoot, and he put it up, and Satriani and Richie Coates were liking it, on there. So I thought, okay, right, so I cancelled the guy to do the artwork, and I just did the lot, and I got a guy called Sam Hales to kind of arrange it for the vinyl, So yeah, I didn't plan on doing it, but then I just thought, yeah, this is getting a good response, let's go with it.
So now that you mentioned Satriani, let me ask, did the original artwork of Surfing with the Alien give you any sort of inspiration? Because there's, like you said, there's a little bit of that. The album is called The Fire Cosmic. It's got a little bit of old and a little bit of the future in it as well.
Yes, yeah. And that was something that when I had done the artwork and I was talk about me using it for the album, it was just tying up the music to the visual, so I wasn't sure. But yeah, what Satriani is referencing there is Jack Kirby and the Silver Surfer and all that kind of stuff. And I'm a huge fan of all that. And when I was a kid, Surfing with the Alien was a massive album to me. I was about 16 when I heard that, or maybe 15, 16, whatever it was. So that's always in the back of my mind. But it was more a homage to Jack Kirby than Satriani. It's my love of the comic artist Jack Kirby. I think that sent me down that path.
Speaking again of the visual aesthetic to this album, you released a couple of music videos.
Yeah.
Waiting for Your Love and also Ghosts. And I want to talk about those too, because they seem to come from different styles, as in Waiting for Your Love seems to be more of the rock ethos. And the Ghosts video seems to have more of that Troy Redfern blues cinematic quality. You got a little bit of both on this new album. What sort of pushed you a little bit into some of the more rock aspects here?
Well, before I started recording the album, I did complete demos. They were more than demos. They were almost like finished products, like I would have released normally. And they were more open sounding. They were kind of more rockabilly, or just with the drums had more air around them. And then I decided to get a producer in, a guy called Paul Winstanley, and he normally sort of produces more heavier music or more rock orientated music. And I also enlisted Darby Todd to play drums and Dave Marks to play bass. And when we, because I sent those guys the demos, there was no rehearsal, so we went to the studio completely dry, so I didn't know what was going to happen really. And Darby's a rock player, he can play all sorts. He can play jazz. He's just one of these, he's just an amazing talent, really. But his delivery was rock. So the drum, and as you know, when you're recording, the drums kind of set the tone for everything else you layer on top of that. And the way I felt about it, I wasn't involved with the mix or anything like that. That was Paul. But it was just, I think it was just a nice crossover, production wise, because some folks that wouldn't normally listen to what I do may listen to the rockier end of things, and vice versa, so I think he did a great job sort of making it sound modern, but you still got the sort of Waiting for Your Love. It's really like a John Lee Hooker boogie, really, but with a modern sort of rock production on top of it,
Well, the new album comes out on August 6th. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, it's available from my website. So if you go to troyredfern.com, you can find it there. You can pre-order. I can send you a signed copy, or any of that kind of stuff. I'm out over here with Robert John and the Wreck in September. So there's 9 dates for those guys. So just looking forward to that. Yeah,
exciting stuff. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show today, Troy. We appreciate it.
No,
Thanks,
thank you. No,
Troy.
thank you for having me, guys. Thank you.
All right, that's going to wrap up this week's edition of the Blues Rock Show. For Troy Redfern and Willie Witten, I'm Pete Francis. We'll see you next time.